All right, let's see if I can get this to Jamie's liking. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today on CBS Sports HQ. We are powered by Dodge. That is Jamie Eisenberg. That is Dave Richard, and I am Casey Kiernan. Was that good?
Well done.
I got an applause, folks. All right, so we're doing day trading now with Dave. Rather, you are, because Dave asked you for any trades involving Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, Jordan Howard, or Rams receivers the last 24 hours, and you sent them in. Let's get to them. Number one, Rudy traded Bell and Adams for Mixon and Hilton. He's got Antonio Brown, and he needed a running back in a standard league. Dave, what do you think?
Well, because he needed the running back, and assuming Mixon plays this week, I hope he does for you, Rudy, I think the trade works out for you. But in pure value on the chart, it's very close. I think I like the Mixon and Hilton side worse than I do the other side of the trade. I look at Le'Veon Bell as a top 10 fantasy running back right now. That's what his value should be in a trade. I can name 9 running backs, 12 wide receivers, and 1 Travis Kelce as guys I'd rather have than Le'Veon Bell as far as trade value goes. He's ahead of every quarterback, even Patrick Mahomes. So that's what his value is right this second. And as he comes closer to coming back, and once he does come back and play, the value can only go up from there.
All right, we shall see. Next up is Meach. He actually has a question. He wants to know if he should trade Fournette and Stafford for Jordan Howard and Deion Lewis. He already has Christian McCaffrey.
This one is a lot closer because Jordan Howard's value is very much in flux. Everybody was very frustrated with the game that he had against Tampa Bay, but the Bears say that they use Jordan Howard or they use Tariq Cohen rather, specifically for the matchup, and it's not necessarily a reflection of how the rest of the season's going to go. I'm going to say that the Howard and Deion Lewis side is actually the better side to be on.
Okay. Next up is Greg. Greg traded Jordan Howard, Fitz, Ebron for A.J. Green, half-point PPR league.
Fitz at this point really doesn't have much value, and Ebron and Howard combined, it's nice, but A.J. Green's one of the best receivers in fantasy, if not the best receiver in fantasy, maybe second to Michael Thomas at this point. Green side wins.
All right, you win. Next up is Juan. He traded Mark Ingram for Le'Veon Bell. What do you think?
As great as that Ingram's coming back, maybe you were desperate to get a running back who's going to play in week 5 and then week 7 because Ingram's not back, in week 6 because he's on bye. Bell's got more value than Ingram at this point.
Okay. Next up is Michael. He wants to know if he should trade Cooper Kupp for Jared Cook. He needs a tight end bag because he had Tyler Eifert.
Do you believe in Jared Cook? Do you really believe that he's going to be this guy for the rest of the season?
Because that's what we've been saying from week 1, though, and he has been.
Well, he has and he hasn't, whereas Cooper Kupp has been more or less very consistent. He's had 1 bad game so far this season. I'd rather have Kupp and stream tight ends than give up Kupp to get Jared Cook. The only way I wouldn't do it, and Jamie, you can nod if you agree or disagree with me, is if Kupp is on your bench. Like rock solid, going to be on your bench, never going to use him, and then you trade him to get the tight end. What do you think? Give me a nod. That's what it is.
Okay.
Only in that case. Otherwise, Kupp has more value.
All right, we have agreement. And that was day trading with Dave, not with Jamie. He's only allowed to nod in that segment. A lot from Jamie here coming up because we're about to do waiver wires, and let's start with running backs. There's some key players on a bye. Those would be Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen on the Bears, Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber on the Bucs. But here's some injuries of note. Leonard Fournette's got a hamstring injury. Doug Marrone is uncertain when he will return. And you got Dalvin Cook less than 100%. Zeke Elliott, you heard Jerry Jones says he will play. Adrian Peterson should be ready. Joe Mixon, we'll see. Devonta Freeman, Dan Quinn hopes that he'll return, so that's optimistic. Chris Carson, speaking of optimism, Pete Carroll says he expected to return. How about Marlon Mack? Still limited in practice. And guys, if we go to our drops of the week at the running back spot, you're going to see an Indianapolis running back, and that would be Marlon Mack and Jordan Wilkins. Guys, Nyheim Hines, a season-high 9 receptions for 63 yards, 2 TDs. What's going on with that backfield, Jamie? You're allowed to talk.
Oh, okay, good. Look, it's been a trouble for them to run the ball. And with the way this offense is going to operate, specifically on Thursday night, without T.Y. Hilton expected to play, you can envision a lot of dump-off passes in a comeback effort from the Colts because they're probably chasing points. So Hines, I don't think is getting 9 for 63 and 2 touchdowns, but 6 or 7 catches, 40, 50 yards, chance to find the end zone. He's a good flex in PPR this week and somebody you should definitely stash in that type of format.
I mean, forget the playing from behind for Nyheim Hines. This guy's got a chance to get a couple of carries. He's been getting about 5 per week, and I think he should be a part of their regular plan on offense. He's just that good catching the ball out of the backfield. Wilkins has been a dud. Matt can't stay healthy. They've already cut Kristen Michael. Robert Turbin's coming back. Turbin could work the goal line and be that physical short yardage guy. But otherwise, I think this offense should be on the shoulders of Andrew Luck, which apparently looked very good after what we saw against Houston in Week 4.
Luck, though, does like to throw to Hines. Where do you rank Hines this week in PPR, considering the injuries to Doyle and Hill?
I think he's got to be in the conversation as a low-end number 2 running back in PPR because that volume should be there for him. Again, do you really think there's going to be a situation where Marlon Mack or Jordan Wilkins comes out of thin air and just runs the ball down the throat of the New England Patriots and that's how the Colts win? Yeah, you're dreaming if you think that's going to happen. It's going to be Hines, and he definitely makes the cut as a top 24 rusher.
All right, let's take a look at the priority ads list on the waiver wire, and it's got to start with TJ Yeldon. I know he's at 67%. Normally our threshold is 65. It's a big ad, though. You see everyone else on your list. Let's focus on Yeldon, though, guys. How concerned should the Fournette owner be at this point?
Well, I mean, the report that he could miss the next 2 games is certainly something you have to take as viable because what we've seen from him is he can't finish any games. You know, plays week 1, plays week 4, leaves both those games, misses weeks 2 and week 3. So they have to get this right. They're winning games without him. So they want this guy ready for December, January, potentially the early part of February if they're going to get there. And they're going to take their time with this. You know, our colleague Pete Prisco, you know, I think somewhat jokingly brought up the fact that they put him on short-term IR just to make sure this is right and have him, you know, ready for the close of the season. I don't expect that to happen, but at this point, TJ Yeldon is a guy you have to look at as a short-term starter and potentially a long-term starter if they can't get this hamstring right for Fournette.
So, Dave, what does the Fournette owner do at this point?
You wait and you try and get TJ Yeldon, pay whatever you have to pay, assuming you don't have good running backs on your bench to go and use ahead of Leonard Fournette. And then there's another running back in the mix here, and it's Corey Grant, who I know that they like. They're just not using as much as Yeldon. Yeldon came into Week 4 banged up. If he were to get hurt, it's Corey Grant who's going to be at the helm of this run game. I wouldn't mind stashing Grant if I can't get my hands on Yeldon, especially if I had Leonard Fournette on my team.
Are we confident that Yeldon is going to get the start and be very productive? Because we haven't seen
this week,
so
yes.
much. Okay, because he hasn't really been super productive in starts. Last week he blew up on a lot of people's bench.
Yep.
And he didn't even start the game.
No, you're right. And Week 1 was another one of his better games. And then Week 2 and Week 3, you know, he was battling through injuries, as Dave alluded to. But the matchup is so fantastic. We just got through talking at the beginning of the show about what Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman just did to this Chiefs defense. Matt Breida and Alfred Morris had some good moments against them as well. You go back Week 2, James Conner scored against them. Week 1, Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon scored against them. So this Chiefs defense, while everybody looks at the passing defense and saying it's just an easy team to go against in that regard, you can run on them also, and TJ Yeldon's going to have a big, big day.
Yeah, absolutely. No-brainer against Kansas City. We saw last night how many yards per carry they gave it to Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay, the most fantasy points to running backs in the NFL. Let's talk about Tariq Cohen. He blew up, 174 yards and a TD. Does he do it again? Ever? What do you think?
Ever? Yes. Can we predict it?
No.
Maybe. Maybe not. You know, and that was the answer that Matt Nagy gave after the game when he said, well, was this a long-term decision or just something for this week? He said maybe. He's not telling, basically. But how can you ignore what Tariq Cohen did? And the fact that he was able to be used in such a versatile way. Apparently, he was in the coach's doghouse after the preseason. He got out of it, and he had the opportunity to take advantage of a bad pass defense in Tampa Bay. And I think that's going to be the recipe, is that when the game comes along where the Bears are going to be able to throw very easily, Trubisky's going to have time in the pocket, all the receivers are healthy, and they've got great matchups all over the place, that's when you'll see Tariq Cohen get more targets and then maybe more carries on top of Jordan Howard. Howard had a touchdown opportunity in the game. He just couldn't punch it in from a yard or 2 out. And I think there will be matchups going forward where it's going to be easier for the Bears to run rather than throw. And that's when Jordan Howard's going to get his numbers. The Bears don't care about our fantasy team, Casey.
No, they don't.
It's really sad.
It'll be hard for Howard, though, to live up to his preseason ranking, though, won't it?
I think it will, because now it's clear that, first of all, it wasn't like Howard was lighting things up before anyway, and that's another part of the problem here, is that Cohen got the opportunity, did really well. I think the Bears just don't want to overwork him, and we could see some sort of split, whether it's 60-40, 50-50, 40-60 the other way. It's really going to come down to the matchup each week for Chicago.
A guy with a better chance to turn his season around, Jordan Howard or Dalvin Cook? What do you think, Jamie?
Oh, man, if Dalvin's healthy, I'll take Dalvin, but right now it's just hard to count on him with that hamstring problem. So I guess it's Jordan Howard.
I'll say Cook. I think he can get the hamstring problem figured out, and when he's right, he's very, very good.
Let's go to Seattle. Mike Davis led the Seahawks with 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. How do we handle this backfield at this point, Jane?
I mean, if you're looking at Mike Davis, you're hoping that Chris Carson is out. Now, you did hear Pete Carroll say that they're going to give Mike Davis work along with Carson if he does return as expected. But that'll make it just things messy. Mike Davis looked awesome. You know, it was the best running back by Seattle. It was the best performance by a Seattle running back maybe since Marshawn Lynch left. That's how bad it's been for them in the last couple of seasons. So I would be hopeful if I was looking at Davis that Carson doesn't play. If I'm the Carson owner, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm going to try and get Davis just to handcuff the situation. So we'll see if they do play Carson. Look, Carson was expected to go up until the last minute. He was a surprise inactive. So we'll see how they handled things this week. And clearly the Seahawks have a backup that they're capable of trusting, unlike the guy that they spent a first-round pick on, which has just been a total disaster.
What does this say about Rashad Penny that, you're right, Chris Carson, late scratch. We all expect Penny to get a bulk of the carries. Then it's Mike Davis. What does this say about Penny?
That he's not ready for the big time yet. And the fact that Mike Davis came out and got off to such a hot start, that's all you need to know, is that the coaches saw him play well in this game against Arizona, and now they can lean on him with Carson, and Penny's going to be the third guy in the mix. This is another team. They want to run the football. They want to be physical up front and really just, run the ball down the throat of their opponent. It's really as simple as that. They don't care who does it. We're the ones who care who does it.
Absolutely.
And it's a problem for us because it's going to be 8 carries of Chris Carson, 10 carries of Mike Davis, 3 carries of Rashad Penny, and it's going to be a mess. I would try to just avoid this backfield for the time being. Keep him on your bench. Don't put him in your lineup.
I still think Davis is going to get the majority of touches, though, because he did nothing to lose the job. He was coming off a great game. As well as Davis played, I don't think Pete Carroll is going to take the job away from him. It's just going to be a supplement type.
You mean over Chris Carson even?
Yes.
So
then he's giving the job to Davis with Carson, who couldn't even play.
Carson's 1, Davis is 2 in a secondary role. Rashad Penny's not going to touch the ball unless he's playing special teams.
And is that sort of a 1A, 1B thing with Carson and
No,
Davis?
I'm not ready to say that that's the case yet. We'll see how it plays out on Sunday. It's not a good matchup you want to
The
play
Rams,
anyway.
is
Because
that-
they're going to
Yeah,
be chasing
it's gonna be
points.
tough.
Forget it.
So it's the lead one, which is Carson, is a flex at best.
Okay, that is it for running backs. We have a lot more to break down here on Fantasy Football. Today, Blake Bortles is balling out. So who's the #1 Jags receiver? Who should you target that's getting a ton of targets in Jacksonville? Wide receivers next.